Welcome back, Fáilte. I'd like to introduce our panel now. So we have Clíodhna O'Connor, former Dublin. I'm thinking, what title do I put on Clíodhna? There's so many now at this stage. General, I know Clíodhna.
General nice person.
Fabulous nice person. But former Dublin Senior Ladies footballer and current member of the Dublin Ladies backroom team and as athletic performance coach with Irish hockey. We have Jamesy O'Connor, who's former All-Ireland winning Clare hurler, GAA analyst, and works as a secondary school teacher in the famed St. Flannan's College in Ennis. And Steelstown, those of us will know and follow their journey, won their historic first intermediate All-Ireland club title there recently. We're delighted to have Eddie Friel, who was chairman up until last year, I think, Eddie, but as vice chair with the club. So great panel, lots of interesting points we're going to discuss. We're going to open this to the audience as well. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, what I'd love you to do is to stand up, put up your hand like you're back at school, and we're going to have roving microphones. So we're going to have people there that'll be fit to give you the microphone, and you can ask your question to whoever you want. So Gormaigi the shin. So Eddie, we're going to start with you because obviously we're going to have to talk about Steelstown and that fabulous, fabulous win. What has the last few weeks been like?
I suppose it's the stuff of dreams. The last time I was here was for the All-Ireland semi-final against Gael. And we were going up the road. We just left Knock, and we were going up the road. And I turned around to my wife and I said, you know, I think Croke Park's going to suit our team, particularly our forwards. And then we both looked at each other and started to laugh because it's not the sort of sentence that you're used to saying. So actually being in Croke Park with people that you've seen grow up is a bit surreal. Going there and winning an All-Ireland, having the person whose son the team is named after standing beside you whenever the presentation is made is surreal. And the big thing for us was to win a county title. Whenever we won a county title, it was very emotional and it was a big deal. And then things took on a momentum of themselves. And when we won the All-Ireland, it was elation and emotion.
Where did this success come from?
Success, you know, I've heard it said success is many fathers and many mothers as well in Steelstown's case. And Steelstown's most successful team up until this year was our ladies football team. They had won a junior Ulster title and they did set the pace. They were the standard bearers. But where Steelstown is lucky, Steelstown is great people. And we all, on this particular occasion, everybody was pulling together. And the people, the preparations, and the process all came together. And it was the perfect storm of both good luck and preparation. And I think we didn't fall over the line in Croke Park. We smashed through a wall. We played brilliant football. But the club is built on its people, and I think that's the same for most clubs.
The underage building of this team, just talk to me a little about the supports and how you went about building that underage.
Well, the lovely story, I suppose, is the fact that our captain is also the club's coaching officer. And our captain won an All-Ireland with 3 teammates who he had trained whenever they were 9 or 10 years old. So there was the continuity there was the respect for him, and I think we were also lucky in that we had great footballers, but we had footballers who had a wonderful attitude. And one of our star players this year was a young boy called Donagh Gilmore. And Donagh has, I don't think he's ever lost a championship match because he won an All-Ireland minor medal with Derry, and this was his first senior campaign. But I heard a lovely story afterwards. We had a dinner in Dublin after the match, and he pulled one of the coaches aside, a lady from County Clare, and an Ennis-Stymon woman, Jamesy, and he called her over and he said, look, I just want to thank you for the years that you spent looking after me, buying me ice cream, taking me to games, and can I get my photograph taken with you? And you just think there's something special about that young fella, but he also got something great out of the GAA that he thought it was important to do that.
That's a lovely story. And as you said, it was nice to recognise the involvement of coaches from such an early age. In talking about coaches then, Cliodhna, and the supports that we need to have in place, just give us a bit of background, like what works, what do coaches need and support systems they need to make success at underage level?
I think confidence and I think permission to actually go and coach. When we're talking about underage development and club level, I think we have to be really, really honest about what's happening now at club level, because you've conferences, you've information, and you've so many conscientious people trying to do the right thing. Liam Moggan earlier on was talking about doing the right thing because you can make such a big impact. So everybody's taking it really, really seriously, and rightly so, because we know some previous practices mightn't have been great for keeping people in sport and over competitiveness and all of that sort of stuff. So there's massive positives to that, but there's a flip side that I question sometimes. Are we gone too serious? So me, who works in athletic performance or strength and conditioning or whatever way you want to talk about it, constantly being asked about, we do extra gym sessions, extra this, how do we work on the running mechanics of the under 13 ladies team? And I'm like, they're going through puberty. They're going to be all over the place for the next few years anyway. And there's this massive pressure at the minute. And even me, I took a minor team a couple of years ago, and I remember standing on the sideline. It was one of the most stressful coaching experiences I've ever had, because I'm there trying to give people game time, and there was a particular player on the pitch who wasn't doing well at the time and was getting beaten. And I could feel like the eyes burn in the back of my head, and does she not see that the wing back is getting beaten up a stick here? And I felt under pressure.
Where was that pressure coming from?
Well, maybe it's perceived pressure, because maybe it says more about me and I should have more self-confidence. But I was standing on the side of my GAA club going, they're going to think I don't know what I'm doing because I'm not making a change here. But I'm making a decision to give this person game time and let them play and do all those values. So I think you're talking about your question, back to your question, you asked me what do coaches need as support, and I think we need to support each other to do things the right way, to do the best practice, because everybody with goodwill is getting involved in local GAA clubs and wants to do it right and is taking the job really seriously, which is great. But I feel that we can slide into too serious and we forget that it's a local grassroots community sport, and conferences today are wonderful and sharing best practice, but we have to keep that context, and we have to remember that it's our job to coach everybody who shows up in our local GAA club, and not be annoyed that the player who's not particularly, their skill set isn't quite high that particular season, I have to modify my session to include this person. They're going to ruin my session. No, it's your job to coach everybody who shows up. And I think we have to help each other a bit as coaches to do that.
What have you learned, Jamesy, over the years from coaching underage teams, being involved, of course, as yourself as a hurler, but then coaching underage teams and school teams? What have you learned in the terms of support we need as coaches?
I'm probably a lot mellower now than I was before Grania, and I think, look, I look back, and I'd say a lot of us as coaches maybe look back with regret, or maybe at some of the mistakes we made, and maybe how seriously we took it, and it was all about winning and so on. So I'd say I'm probably more philosophical now. I have 3 kids. I have 2 daughters who don't take it that seriously, and I have a fella who's younger who is on development squads and plays with Flannans, and it's more that side of it. But I definitely think I've got a better perspective on it now, and something you were talking about recognizing that we do a lot of good, and we don't necessarily have to win the county championship. That a lot of the times it's a social thing, especially with the girls, I think, more so with the girls. But it's about, just having that perspective. And just as I look at it, obviously we're always learning, and and dates like today are fantastic in terms of the people you meet and ideas that you can share and so on. But I think, perspective, I'd say, is the biggest thing that I've learned. That I'm mellower now, I'm cooler, I think, about things. I think I see the bigger picture now, a picture that I didn't necessarily see 10, 15 years ago.
And what is that bigger picture for you?
I think it's as I said, it's the journey. You know, you don't necessarily have to. Only one team is going to win at the end of the day. But it's the journey along the way. It's the experiences. It's the values. I think that you get across. I think it's the relationships. It's the friendships. You know, as I said, I think it's the journey. You know, and you know, trying to create, I think, that positive, supportive environment. You know, where you know, again, everyone is valued. And I suppose, look, I've been involved in camogie maybe in recent years. I mean, my wife was chairwoman of the club. I was involved with 16 in the minor team. And she'd be coming up to me 20 minutes into the game, you're not going to bring Amber on, you know, but you're kind of saying, well, listen, I know I can bring Amber on with 10 minutes and she get the 2 goals and win the match for us. Do you know what I mean? But Mary and Beatrice have to play, you know what I mean? Because they're in their last year. And it's, you know, it's just, I think, and they get something out of it, you know what I mean? And they feel valued, I think. And not saying that I've all the answers, I don't. But I think, as I said, it's, you know, it's just making sure that the experience for the kids is a positive one, it's an enjoyable one, and they're not all going to be, you know, Henry Shefflins or Tony Kellys or whatever, but that hopefully, you know, they've enjoyed the experience and they'll come back, and it might be that they're going to be the club secretary or they're going to be involved in the field committee or whatever it is. They're not all going to play senior hurling, football, camogie or ladies football for the club, but that they'll feel part of something, you know, and hopefully give back the way I think, you know, anyone who's here today is doing and has doing and will continue to do going forward.
Just that role of community and, you know, talking about pressure and maybe pressure we put on ourselves. Like when you look at Steelstown journey, Eddie, and I mean, Derry City was not a traditional GAA stronghold at all. So how did you get that buy-in from the community that they got behind the team and they wanted to see them do well?
I think an urban, particularly a new urban GAA club, it's an interesting thing in that if you take County Mayo here, the parishes were here first and the club grew out of the parish. And where we are in Steelstown, a club was formed and a community grew up around that club. So now, whenever you go to events, you see the people who are part of that Steelstown family and that Steelstown community. And I think that it is, you know, what James is saying and what Cliodhna is saying, I think that's 100% correct. If you're building a club, people need to want to be there. They need to go and enjoy themselves. And I think what we have tried to do is make sure that we can bring people in, that we can retain them. We have got brilliant facilitators, administrators in the club, and that is very, very important. And I know even in my time as chairman, one of the targets that I sort of set myself was at the end of the year, how many selection boxes did we give out at the final training session for children in any particular year? Because it meant if we were giving out an awful lot of selection boxes, there were an awful lot of people coming through the doors. And that was something that we had to build on. And I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson said that at the end of every day, you should judge yourself on the seeds that you've sown, not on what you have reaped. And I know that this year at our convention took place after the county final. And that was one of the things that I suppose as a club we congratulated ourselves on. Yes, we won our first men's championship, but not only that, we vastly increased the number of young people coming through the doors. And the club has been a refuge. I think it was Liam said it earlier on. During COVID, the club has assumed much greater importance and people have seen the value of the club and people want to connect, people want to feel involved, they want to belong, and that's something that's particularly important in a city. So we have managed to keep people together, and I heard a priest say recently that I think it's an African proverb that if you want to travel fast, travel alone, but if you want to travel far, travel together. And we have travelled together as a club on this journey, and it has taken us a long way.
The role of community and schools, Cliodhna and Jamesy, how challenging, how do you organise that as a coach, that you get that collective buy-in from everybody involved?
I think from a coach's perspective, dealing with young people now, one of the biggest challenges is the players that have multiple interests. Because we as coaches, we have our plan and I'm going to train twice a week, 2 60-minute sessions, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is my plan for the month, etc., etc. And then they've got a school musical, and they're not showing up any Tuesday night, or then they're playing soccer, or then they're doing whatever it is, they're doing whatever. And again, sometimes I think embracing the fact that there are multiple interests and there are different things happening in school, and we as coaches, we don't own the players, and the plan gets messed up because they've got other things going on, and that's not a negative. If we're practicing what we preach, that we want well-rounded young people embedded in the local community, sure, the more stuff they're doing, the better, and that's wonderful. And I think, and especially if you've got a local school that has a lot going on, a real vibrant school, they're going to be pulled left, right and centre. And we definitely have to embrace that and not be worried about our little section. We're only part of their lives. And if we're doing our job right, they'll keep coming back and they'll keep returning. Even if they miss a session here or there, they should be able to drop in and out and do all the things they want to do. James, you'd have a perspective obviously from a school point of view.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's particularly challenging for the dual player. I think it's the demands are, growing, and we won the Munster Dean Ryan in Flannans this year, which is the under 16.5 competition, with I'd say a fraction of the training collectively that we would have done in previous years. When I'd have been involved with teams 15 years ago, but it was kind of nearly recognising that okay, look at what's we got them in over the midterm break for one session. We brought them in on a Sunday morning because the transition years have been away for a week. And we organised breakfast for them both mornings. And I'd say that was nearly more important in terms of just seeing them together, interacting, getting to know each other, guys mixing with fellas from different clubs, and that social side of it. I'd say there was more value in what we did after training than what we did necessarily on the field. But it's just trying to, communicate and just been aware of specific. Look at these guys are already trained. They're involved with development squads. They're involved with minor teams with their clubs. They're playing hurling and football, and they're trying to serve maybe 3, 4, 5 different masters. So it's really important that there's communication there, and often less is more. And I mean, again, I don't want to talk about my own young fella, but he was training with the county development squads, 16s on Monday evening, and came home, complained that he pulled his groin. He's supposed to have a hurling match with the squads today, a football match with the school tomorrow, trained with the minors last night and Wednesday night. And he said to me, "Sure, I've trained 6 times in the last seven days." And I'm saying to him, "Look, you're going to have to manage it and forget about those matches. You got to get this right." So it's just about, I think, communication and being aware and being prepared to say, "Listen, I don't have to flog them every night they're here. I don't necessarily, like, sometimes telling them don't want to see you for a week is the more beneficial thing for them." But I think it's been aware of that and been prepared to compromise and prepared to pull back, from your plan, and prepared to modify your plan and adapt based on what you're seeing in front of you. And you've got to be conscious as well that, and I've seen this over the years, that you're not always dealing with people that see things the same way you do, and common sense isn't necessarily all that common. And I remember one story, and it's gone back about 10 years ago. We were in, I'd say, it might have been a Harty semi-final or maybe an All-Ireland semi-final or whatever, and we had a guy with a hamstring injury with his club, and got hurt with the club, and we looked after the physical side of things. It was rest, don't want to see you. And his club were playing senior championship. It was a group match the following weekend, and you go to the match and he's starting with the leg strapped from knee to his backside, and they're up 10 points early in the second half, and they're taking off 3, 4, 5, left him on for the full 60 minutes, and you're shaking your head about player welfare. So I think it's just, you have to see the bigger picture. You have a duty of care to them, and I think it's really important that you have perspective, and as I said, you're able to take a step back and see. You've got to put the player first. You've got to see things from their perspective. Try to think. Talk to them, communicate. What are you doing? And sometimes less is a lot more.
This gentleman here, if we can get a roving mic.
Yeah. That's a question for Cliodhna as a former goalkeeper. There seems to be a bit of a trend developing now of goalkeepers evolving from just being somebody who stands on the goal line and takes kickouts to being actually now a member of the outfield team as well, and whether we as coaches should be looking to develop that in our goalkeepers.
Well, I just think I'm glad the rest of the world has caught up to how great goalkeepers are, to be honest. It took you a while, but thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, the position, there's been a good bit of chat about the position is evolving and how you use it. And I think that going back to youth development, maybe we can see the value of the goalkeeper a little bit differently. I know I was put in goals when I was a teenager because I was tall, I could catch it over my head and I could kick it far. They were the criteria. And it wasn't really thought about, well, is she actually a good goalkeeper? They were the 3 skills. And sometimes think about who stands in goals in training sessions. It can be the injured player, or the player that can be disengaged, or the player that maybe doesn't want to play outfield, and I'll just stand here. This is the easy option. So I think we can be a little bit more creative and a little bit more, I suppose, open-minded in terms of how we develop our goalkeepers in their teenagers' years, and who we give the opportunity. If you ask somebody who's the best passer of the ball and who can catch it over the head, the midfielder, would you ever think of putting her in goal? God, no, she'd be wasted in there. But maybe we can think about it a little bit differently as coaches, and how to use that. There's plenty of examples of when a team goes down to 14 players and the goalkeeper pushes up on the full forward for the kick out, so everyone can push up. There's loads of little tactical things like that. So I definitely think it's always the way, isn't it? Something happens, a goalkeeper starts taking 45s, and all of a sudden we're thinking about it differently. So I think it's a good thing. And yeah, welcome aboard to the goalkeeping union. Thanks.
Anybody else have a question that they'd like to ask? So just if you put up your hand again. Yep, that gentleman there.
I'm involved with schools training in my own club. Any ideas on how to involve more children in our club from the local schools?
Who would you like to answer that question?
I don't mind.
Okay. Jamesy, do you want to take that with schools?
Involve kids from the school in the local club.
Get more down to the pitch.
I think it's probably talking to the school. Sometimes I certainly know that we have an issue with, say, one of our schools, in the sense that we're on the edge of Ennis, and we're kind of that suburban kind of thing, and you know, you'd think that there'd be that all the kids going to Knockanaim would be members of the club. And I remember there was one particular year, I think there were 3 out of 12 boys in 6th class that were playing with the club, but that meant 9 of them weren't. You know what I mean? So look, we went into the school. How proactive we were in terms of doing that, maybe not proactive enough. But I think it's Tumivara and Tipperary. I think on the first day of national school, whatever, I think I heard something years ago where they go in, they present every kid with a hurley and a slitter. Do you know what I mean? And they have a link then to the school in terms of there's a club coach going into the school. You know what I mean? And it starts in junior infants or senior infants, where that connection is made. Listen, every club is challenging. In a rural community, you can have a case of, we'll say, where everybody is down at the club. In a suburban kind of club like I am, where people are maybe moving into the area that don't have that connection, you could have huge numbers that have no connection with the club, that don't play. So it's a challenge, and I'd say that every situation is different. But I think trying to forge that link between club and school as early as you can, trying to get that club coach into the school as early as you can, and trying to forge that relationship, I think is critically important. That can often depend on the school principal. If the school principal is a GA person, fully on board with it, it happens, and it happens organically. If the school principal isn't so amenable, it's a different story and can be much more challenging. So I think every situation is different.
I know in our experience, we're very much an urban club, and we try and get coaches to go into the schools. And I think what you often find is that if you do approach a school principal, they often would be delighted to have someone come and coach some of their teams and take people out for a while and do some of the PE. Now, you do get into, particularly in a city, different clubs may have different fields of influence, but it's something that I know for us, the challenge is actually having enough coaches to provide a proper service to the people in schools. But I think that connection of actually going out and evangelising and saying to schools, look, we want your children to come and train. And I know in the last number of weeks we have seen a massive explosion of interest where schools have invited some of our players back because we have won a number of trophies. They've had Steelstown Brian Oakes days in the schools, and it's brilliant in terms of what it feeds through to us. But that was initiated by the club. We did send people out to schools, but now the challenge for us is to actually capitalise on it. But I think if your club approaches the school, it's very rare that they would turn away the opportunity to have someone come in and take children, whether it's for an hour, half an hour, whatever.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll just take one final question before we finish up.
Maybe just a question for Eddie. I'm thinking of Steelstown and those urban clubs. How big a role have people coming in from outside played? I'm thinking maybe even of Carryduffs and Brides in Belfast. A lot of maybe people from outside the area start at the club, and at what stage, do you stand alone? And can that be replicated in other areas in Derry and possibly Belfast?
I think it definitely can. I look at our club. Our club was founded in 1987, and it was underage teams for the first number of years. And I moved to Derry. I'm originally from Dungiven, and I moved to Derry in 1997 and got involved with Steelstown then. And for people coming in to a city, it's a brilliant thing to join a club, because you can join a community. You're going to have a group of friends. You're going to have a circle of people that you can meet. But what I have seen, particularly over the past 2 or 3 years, and it probably is best exemplified by the fact that I have stepped down as chairman of our club. I'm a blow-in. I stepped down after Christmas. Our current chairman is someone who was born in the city, played minor football for Derry, played senior football for Derry, lives in Derry, and has represented Steelstown, has managed Steelstown. So I think that the actual outsiders coming in plant the seeds, but if they plant them well enough and plant them deep enough, that their children, the people who gather, the people who come and join the club from the city itself, they're the ones that will take the club forward. So if I look at the team I started playing in, they were nearly all blow-ins. I look at the team that won in All-Ireland 2 weeks ago. They're all born and bred in Derry City. And if somebody had said that 3 or 4 years ago, that an entire team born and bred in Derry City would win in All-Ireland, no one would believe them. But that is the case. So I think it's a question of putting down the roots, getting the roots deep enough, and the club will grow. If it's set up strong enough at the start, the club will grow around it, and then the people themselves will take the club forward. So our club is very, very much a club off the city. It has a history. It has people. It's been well told, the story. It's named after Brian Ogue. Was a young player. He played minor football. He was a superb footballer. He died tragically young. The club was named after him. We've had other people. Charlene Griffiths was one of the lead female coaches, a player, and we recognise Charlene. We have a camp of Charlene every year. So we make our own history. We have a history. We have as strong a history as any Gaelic club that has been going on anywhere else. But what is important is that the people that come behind and carry it know what the history is and take the values of it forward. But absolutely, sowing a seed, the likes of Carryduff and all the rest, it will be people from Carryduff who will build that club. It won't be blow-ins.
Thank you, Eddie.
Okay, gur míle maith sin.